In this video, I'm going to show you how to remove the front and rear racks from your G2 Can-Am Outlander. There's a number of reasons why you might want to do this. You might just want to run without the rack because you like the look, or you want to reduce the weight, or you might want to take the rack off so that you can do a more precise job of mounting an accessory, drilling some holes through it. That's what I did in order to mount fuel cans to my front rack and some cargo boxes to my rear rack. So we'll start here with the front rack. This is a shot of the front rack removed. The ATV here in question is Can-Am Outlander 1000XT 2014 model. Here's a look at the tools we're going to need. From left to right, we have a T30 Torx bit. Then we've got a 13mm and a 10mm socket, 1/4-inch drive. Got a 1/4-inch drive ratchet, a 4-inch wobble extension for a 1/4-inch drive, and a 6-inch long extension, and finally a small 8mm open-ended wrench. Here's a look at all the fasteners we'll have to remove to get the front rack off. Starting from the bottom of the picture, we've got two black T30 Torx bolts. Above that, we've got two silver colored 13mm bolts, and at the top we have two long 10mm bolts, and beside those small coarse screws. We start by removing the silver 13mm bolts. There's one on each side. They're located up under the front fenders, just beside the headlights. Here you can see this is the left side looking forward, and the red arrow there indicates the silver bolt being removed. Remove one from each side. This is a view from the right hand side, and the red arrow there indicates the location where the bolt was removed from. And here's a picture of the bolt removed. Again, there's one on each side, one left and one right. Take those out first. And then we move on to the black Torx bolts. They're located at the front on top of the ATV. They join the front bumper to the front rack. You can see the location here with the red arrow. Here's a close-up shot. You can see that that bolt's just started to be removed there. It has a Torx head, and you need to use a couple of extensions on your ratchet to get to it. I also used a wobble extension, and that's just something that gives you a little bit of misalignment between the Torx bit and the extension itself, and that lets you get a better grip with the Torx bit into the head of the bolt because of the angle that it's at there to get up over the fender. And you need to get a good grip on that because the Torx bolts, they're pretty notorious for stripping if you don't get good engagement between the Torx bit and the head of the Torx bolt. With those removed, we go back under the fenders. Here we are on the left side again, and there'll be the two long bolts. The long bolt comes out of the location indicated by the blue arrow, and it goes through that black metal bracket there on the frame, up through the plastic of the fender and into the rack bracket. And then the red arrow there shows the little coarse threaded screw that we also need to remove. The coarse threaded screws there, they're what I call an assembly line fastener, in that they don't actually provide much function once the ATV's been built, but they're installed at the factory to hold pieces together while the machine is being built. In this case, there really isn't any need to replace them. Once you've taken it out the first time, you needn't put it back. Here's a close-up shot. Again, the blue arrow indicates where the long 10mm bolts come out of. We'll be putting those back, and those screws there that just go through the plastic and into the rack, that's indicated by the red arrow. We're going to take those out and not bother to reinstall them. Now you'll notice there isn't very much clearance there between the head of that bolt, the screw. There isn't much clearance between it and the black metal bracket, so there's a bit of a trick to getting it out, and I'll show you that now. In order to get it out, basically what you have to do is pull up on the rack as you're loosening it. You have to use the 8mm open-ended wrench to get in there from below, and as you loosen it, you pull up on the rack. You can see a close-up here to give yourself some clearance so that you can back that screw all the way out. This is what the screw looks like when you get it out. Again, I'm not going to bother reinstalling them. They're just used at the factory to hold stuff together while they're building the machine. The 4 bolts that we removed from the very front, that is the 2 black Torx and the 2 13mm silver, they all thread into nuts that are held captive in these little black plastic nut keeper squares. If you happen to knock one loose while you're removing the rack, as I've done here, you can see the red arrow points to the location where one of those little black plastic square nut keepers go. It's fairly easy to put them back into place. This shows the correct location for the black Torx bolt and the silver 13mm bolts. The one on the top there, that's the one the silver 13mm bolt threads into, and the red arrow below that shows the one that the Torx bolts thread into from the bumper and through into the rack bracket. Once we've got all the fasteners removed, we can pull the rack up and away from the ATV. This is just a shot here with the rack removed, and you can see that little coarse threaded screw sticking up through the plastic there, and this just helps to illustrate that it really doesn't serve much purpose once the longer bolt, the 10mm bolt, is inserted through that slot behind it. So there's really nothing more that it adds, so we can leave it out. This is a shot of the bumper with the rack removed. The reason I've included this is for those people who may want to run without the rack but want to keep the bumper installed. You'll have to fabricate some kind of a small L bracket to join the bumper bracket there through to the frame underneath the plastic. That's where that silver bolt came out of. This is a close-up shot of that same area, left hand side, where we need to custom make a small L-shaped bracket, and it will join up with that silver bolt that goes up through the frame from underneath. Same thing obviously on the right hand side. This is a shot of the bumper bracket and the fender there on the right hand side, and a close-up with the same thing. This is a shot of the underside of the front rack. I've just taken it off there and flipped it over so that you can have a look at what it looks like from underneath. This is a look at the square aluminum tube that forms the main structural strength of the front rack. And here's another shot, closer look at the underside of the front rack. You can see the mounting bracket, the aluminum tube, and the plastic rack itself. So that's all there is to removing the front rack. Of course, reinstalling it is just the reversal of that same procedure. Noting again that personally I choose to leave out the small screws as they don't really serve any structural purpose. But that's it for removing and replacing the front rack on your G2 Can-Am Outlander. And next we'll move on to removing the rear racks. So here's a look at the rear rack on the G2 Outlander. It's actually even more simple to remove than the front rack. There are just 4 nuts that need to be taken off. They're all 13mm Nylock locking nuts. There's 4 of them, 2 on each side. I used a 3/8 ratchet with a 6-inch extension and a medium deep 13mm socket. You need a fairly deep socket in order to get over the nuts with the amount of stud that protrudes through them when they're done up. There's two on each side. This is the left-hand side. They're up underneath the rear fenders there. The two red arrows show the location. This is the left side. And this is a shot from the right-hand side. The two red arrows there, again, indicating the two nuts that you have to remove to take the rear rack off. Once you've got the nuts removed, it's just a matter of prying up on the rack, pulling up on it to get it off the machine. I found it came out pretty easily, the rearmost studs, but the forward ones, you can see the two mounting holes there up on the forward edge of the rear fenders. The studs were a little tight through the frame brackets there, so I ended up using a small pry bar wrapped with a cloth so I wouldn't scratch the rack or the fender plastics, and actually used the pry bar a little bit to lever up the front edge, the front end of the rear rack. But with a little bit of wiggling, it came out, and here's the result. This is what the back looks like with the rear rack removed. This is the rear rack itself. Again, I flipped it upside down just so you can have a look at what it looks like underneath. Uses the same square aluminum tubing as the front rack for the main structural support, and then you get the mounting brackets and the plastic rack itself. This is just a slightly different view of the same thing, more of a bird's eye view of the underneath of the back rack. And this is a bird's eye view looking down on the top of the rear rack once it's been removed. You can see the silver bolts there sticking up through there. Those are bolts that I was installing to fasten down some rear storage boxes for the Outlander, which is the reason why I took the rear rack off. Much like the front, reinstalling the rack is pretty much the reverse of the removal process. You just place the rack back into position and retorque those four locking nuts, and you're done. So that's it, folks. Pretty easy procedure, front and rear rack removal, G2 Outlander. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.